Hello, everyone. This is the Moodboard podcast. This is Caesar,
Sarah?
and we are two creatives helping people unlock their creative potential by having meaningful and insightful conversation. In today's episode, we are going to talk about what's been going on in the design news, in the tech news, and we wanted to touch on some of the revealing and launch of Tesla's new products, such as the Robovan and the Robotaxi. And we wanted to talk about the aesthetics of it and how much it resembles sci-fi movies, and how we don't need, today we don't need to watch sci-fi anymore because we can just pay attention.
All right. So the question is, when is innovation really real? Is it when you show it out, present it, or is it when people can buy it off the shelves? Because in the last event that Tesla had, people were able to see this new concepts and ride in these new concept cars, but they are still not in production. So are they real?
I would say they are, in the sense that he made through the trouble of making them real and showing people interacting with the creation, with the design. And so I think it plants a seed in people's minds, of what's coming. Like, he's foreshadowing what's coming by a tangible object, so
Yeah.
people believe what he's talking about,
Yeah. Makes
versus
sense.
showing a video or an animation or a 3D printed, a 3D print model mock-up. No, this is, 1-to-1 scale. And I
Yeah.
mean, I don't know to what extent is like real or feasible, but from what I've seen, it looks like, I don't know, like 95% real. Like, this could be
Right.
done
Yeah.
tomorrow.
What I think is interesting is
Mhm.
that there are two sides to this. There are the observers who are critical of the whatever designs or critical of Elon's controversial, persona, and they're discounting the reality of the things
Mhm.
that he's producing. And then on the other side, you have the fans who are
Supportive
really
of
impressed
anything. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
support
They support anything
exactly.
he does.
Exactly. So I think it's a really interesting tension there because you're right. When you present something, you're foreshadowing. A prototype does a really good job of convincing people uh, about the reality of the thing. And there's always going to be people who are going to be skeptical, etc., of all
Right.
those things. But
I have a story that we can insert here, on the importance of making fully working prototypes
yes,
as your first,
ooh,
let's presentation. Like, the first thing people see is not a sketch, it's not a rendering, it's not a 3D printed, product. It is a, functional prototype that people can touch. If it's a car, they can drive it. So, anyways, you guys get my point. So in this story is the story of I believe this was a story that was told to me, and I'm gonna try to tell it to the most accurate, level that I can remember it. But I think it was the story of the BMW Z4 Roadster, the convertible BMW. um, BMW was working with it. They were working with different design studios that were pitching the design of that convertible to BMW, and there was, I don't know, like 3 or 4 design studios that were pitching a design, and I don't know the details, but what I know that is that one studio in the I think it was the first presentation, and I don't know how that worked, but like, anyways, in the presentation there was one studio that brought a real like um functional prototype of the convertible versus the other studios that um I don't know, they didn't bring it to that level of detail and execution. Well, the studio that presented the design closest to reality was the one who got the job, or like was the one who was assigned, the design of the vehicle. um the moral of the story is that, hey, these people, the studio went to the extent of like, let's figure out how to make it work, and so that people, especially like, I don't know, BMW executives or the people in the presentation, they can believe that what we did, can be real, can be made, because we
Yeah.
went to the extent of making it work. Oh, so that's the moral of the story. Like, they made something close to reality, and now people believe in it, and they got the job.
That's incredible. It really
While studios, I don't know what they presented, but I'm assuming like clay models or like scale
Yeah.
model. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. There was something you said a while back about how it doesn't matter, there's no right or wrong direction, it's only did it get made, and
Right.
I think that that is that's one of those, like, core truths to if you have gone through all the trouble of making something get to as close to the final version as possible in a prototype stage, I think it answers all of the questions before the client or the audience has
Mm.
the capacity to ask those questions, which I
Right.
think is very powerful and convincing. So we're really big on prototypes and on this podcast. I feel like we constantly go back to how important it is to do your learning on one-to-one models as close to the final thing as possible. And if you look at the materials that we work on or we work with, Caesar, on your end, you're working with, I guess you can insert the list of things that materials that you work with:
Mhm.
leather, foam,
Mhm.
plastic, etc.
Yeah.
On my end, we work more with like pixels and code and those are different materials. But when I've been thinking about this, just how badly do you want the thing to be real really is the thing that stretches how deep you go into the research and the extent to which you take that idea in your head and really put it into the world.
Mhm.
So I wanted to ask you, did you let's go back to like the beginning of your time as a designer. What was it like for you to go from idea to final prototype? Where did you find yourself feeling more comfortable in? And just tell me the story about that.
Mhm. Yeah. So I mean, to me, a big shift happened in my design, in my approach to design, my approach to product creation, or during my time at Yeezy. Uh, because we came from, quote unquote, the traditional, or we were taught the common practice of designing. We start with a idea, thumbnail, sketch, blueprint. Then from the blueprint, um, we do a mock-up, and then like a more refined mock-up to the modeling and blah blah blah. Like, you have all these incremental
Your
steps.
stages. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. um which is fine. Like, you need to know that, because later in your career there are gonna be projects where you need to fine tune every stage, or like you need to curate which stages are the ones that you need for the project that you have at hand at that moment in time. Because not every project is gonna need every single stage. Um, but you need to know them so that you can assess, like, okay, I need this and this step, and that's it. Um, well, fast forward to my time at Yeezy, we often were idea and then all the way to prototype.
Wow.
But of course, it
Yeah.
was a quick prototype, but it gave you enough information because you are creating in 3D and you are creating products. So it makes sense that you, well, quote unquote, a sketch on a prototype on a in a 3D representation of your idea. And I'm using, real materials as close as possible to what you would actually use in the product. So I'm using foam, textiles, um, sometimes repurpose materials,
Yeah.
and it could get, the material part could get a little bit crazy, because sometimes there is the color of a material that you really like, but the material doesn't has a hard time being molded or glue onto the sole of a shoe. So like there is all these little details that you have to be mindful of, but um, that's, I mean, for us that was really the best way of working and making decisions, informed decisions,
Got it.
about, we move forward with this or do we change it. It definitely changes your decision making process, and by it changing your decision making process, you end up making different products, uh, because your scenario is different, therefore your character changes. um so to me that's been, uh, right now it's, my approach is more like, hey, let's first evaluate what what you need when I work with new clients, or like when I'm in the process of creating a project brief. Let's evaluate what you need, and then let's, I try to, of course, as much as possible, like, uh, evangelize
Yeah.
the advantage of being with real materials, in an early stage of the design process. Let's start with prototypes,
Right.
because the same time that you spend designing, you could spend making. And what if what you made, it's what you want, or like, oh, this is really good, so you're already shaving off, like, I don't know, weeks or months of work.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's, something for the audience, or like designers, creatives, to really be mindful of.
Initial stage of the design process, because it's so important to me to have these conversations with clients or collaborators where, you know, they the client will come with an idea of what they want, or a initial problem, and it's up to us to help them really discover the core of the problem, the root of it, or help them reframe that, or just open up the creative process to discovering if there's a potentially something better. I think so. The framing of the initial question that you're trying to answer, I think, is so important because it's what leads to interesting solutions. So I wanted to ask you a little bit about that process, about how ideas for concepts develop. What do those conversations look like for you?
Often starts a gathering of different products throughout the, how can I say, throughout history. Like you start with research, you start with references. Hey, I feel like this product, has the approach that I want to emulate with this idea that I have. So here's one, piece of research. Oh, there is this other product, I really like the color of this product. Okay, that's another one.
Yeah.
I like the shape of this product that they made in the 80s. This one, another piece. So the first stages of the conversations, um, you know, could be a this journey of hunting, scouting for objects that speak the language, but you're trying to use the language to another message with your new product.
Hmm.
um and that's why I've told you before that, your product is as good as your research is. So
Yeah. Yeah. Totally.
when you take the due diligence of like doing research and, hunting for those physical products, that's another point that, I have to highlight here, is that that research and the physical, that research should like, I know it's hard for everyone to get, like, let's say an iPad from the, I don't know, first gen iPad, something like that, be challenging.
Yeah.
If you can get your hands on products that are inspiring you, like your new product or your project, get them. Luckily, there is like places like eBay that, sometimes you find things for, like, I don't know, $7, $5,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you know take
They don't even
advantage of
have to
the,
work.
yeah. And so, yeah, take advantage, and yeah, try to gather your inspiration. Go look for it, get it, look at it, touch it, and you can, lay them all out on a table or in space. There you could see a pattern of what you're trying, oh, why am I attracted to these products for this project? Then you can see a pattern there, and that'll help you inform. Also, for communications and for conversations with designers or like engineers or development, like, how much of a easier conversation you'll have with an engineer if you show them physical product that you're referencing.
Totally. Even with digital experiences, it's so much more you have such an advantage when you're able to show something moving, an interaction that has as close of a resemblance to the final thing when you're having conversations with people who are in charge of executing the final result. Um, this is really great to talk about because oftentimes the conversations at the beginning of a project are, I think, in my opinion, often overlooked when we talk
Mm,
about these products. And we always tend to lean towards whatever part of the process I think we're most fascinated by. But the initial conversations I find very inspiring because I think they highlight one, the sensibilities of the designers and the people involved. What are they paying attention to?
mhm,
What is their response to the environment that they're designing for? And what is their understanding of the thing that they're designing, but also the person who will end up using the thing.
yes.
A- And I always go back to this question or this quote that I found that has always had me sort of recalibrate in any design scenario. And I think it's a quote by T.S. Eliot, who is a poet. Uh, and the quote was, "A more beautiful answer to them with a more beautiful question."
Oh, wow.
And so you look back to the products that you're a fan of and you do some research on the story of how they came to be.
Mhm, mhm,
And oftentimes it's been my experience that the reason why these products are the way they are is because the people who designed it were asking a different type of question, a more
mm,
beautiful type of question
right
than
on.
the surrounding industry. So I am quite curious about what kinds of questions were you and your team asking at Yeezy for, some of your most memorable products?
That's a good question, and it varied. Like, it depended on the project. Sometimes, um, I'm trying to remember of like a good example. Um, I mean, I often in my space, in my working space, I had like elements of different shoes, taken apart. So like the outsole of a, I don't know, the outsole of a 450 easy 450, with which is the, the shoe with the fingers.
Hmm.
um so that shoe, I had a few outsoles of that shoe laying around, and sometimes I would be like, this is a language, or this is a design aesthetic that, that it's relevant at the moment, like the designers like it, or like it's it's what's new. So sometimes I thought about, like, okay, what can I do if that's my starting point, how could I finish a shoe if I start there? Um, and sometimes in the industry, or like, yeah, in the industry, is it's common to start at those points where companies have like, hey, we created this tooling, like this sole, we created it, but we haven't found an upper for it, or like we don't know how to apply it to other design, other applications. Can you uh, explore and see what you can do with that? And I've been in that scenario more than once, in different companies, in different scenarios throughout my career, where companies task me to applications for things that they have done, but they haven't been able to find a real application, or they haven't been able to finish or articulate what is that they want. So they're like, hey, here's the starting point, finish it. um often, I'm in that space where I have to come in and finish products and explore what they can be. But I mean, an example of me at work during my days at UC was, I was also sensitive, what the creators were into at the moment, and also like that's the importance of you aligning with apparel team, because they are working on the outfits, and then if the shoe doesn't go with the outfit, it doesn't matter what you created, it just doesn't go, so they don't choose they don't choose your design, they don't choose your work. So you have to be in tune with what they do, um so that when you present something, oh, that's really cool, it goes with this outfit, it was meant for this outfit, type of situation. But um that's another as side of the conversation that I think design,
Yeah.
at least footwear designers in the industry have to be mindful of, because I feel like some or most of them create in a vacuum. And when they come out with shoes, I'm like, as the product itself is cool, or like I don't know, it has all this technology, and from a development standpoint it's cool, but is it
Yeah.
pretty, is it easy to wear with the clothes that you have in your closet? um,
Oh,
um
that's a really good point.
yeah, yeah. And sometimes I've bought shoes where, like, I don't know what to wear this with, or like I don't have anything in my closet that works with these shoes, so I'm like, they just end up being there, and 6 months later I sell them on eBay. But yeah, you have, yeah. And to me that's why I have been a fan of the New Balance 997. uh, it's to me it's a very versatile shoe that goes with almost anything that you wear it with. So that's been my go-to in my closet, for stuff that I wear. Is just something that is easy to match with the
That's
stuff that you already have.
You got me thinking about uh furniture design, and in that
Mm-hmm.
process, how important it is to first off know who you're designing for, because when you know who you're designing for, you have a better understanding of the types of environments that they live in, the types of furniture that they gravitate towards. So if you're designing a chair or a sofa, you're designing it in the context of other objects. And
Mm-hmm.
the same applies to fashion. The same applies to so many things. And this touches on something that I'm just very curious about, that I haven't quite articulated for myself fully yet, but just the amount of relationships involved in design, not just in proportions or materials or um, colors or textures or whatever, all that stuff. That's one part of the relationships, but also the relationships that the products then have with their environment or in their ecosystem, like your
Mm-hmm.
closet or your living room. But even if you go even higher from that, the relationships that the designers have with the consumer, and then
Mm-hmm.
the relationships between the designers within the team of engineers, and all, so there's just all of these different relationships that come into play that
Hmm.
have to complement each other, that have to
Right.
support each other.
And yeah, that's something that no, what can you do with a with a pair of bright yellow running shoes? I'm only gonna wear them when I work out. That's or like when I run. That's it. No more. Like
Yeah, yeah,
they're gonna
yeah.
stay in in the closet forever. Well, now this is a very glad you mentioned what you mentioned because it makes me think. It brought to my mind the picture of the iPod Nano. The what was the thin one? The
Yes.
iPod Nano.
Yes,
And it's a
yeah.
picture of the iPod Nano, the pocket.
Yes, in the pocket, yes.
Which that pocket. What do you think that pocket was for? When you know when they were doing jeans, what was that pocket for? People think it's for
I
change.
Oh, really?
Yeah, people
Wow.
change, but it's not.
Was it for like a Okay, so let's think about this. You're talking about the Levi's because they were one of the first, if not the first, denim jean,
Hmm.
right? And so these pants or these jeans were created for a certain type of person, right? So it's like people who were working in intense environments, miners possibly, because they found some jeans in like
Oh yes,
mines, right?
mines.
Okay.
Yes.
So something something has to it has to be related to some kind of tool, maybe something that is small that needs to have its little I don't
Pocket.
know. Yeah. What's Maybe a key?
Well, I'll give you a hint. What was before wristwatches? What came before wristwatches?
A pocket watch.
It was a
Interesting.
pocket watch. And you have
Wow.
now, 100 years later, you have the iPod Nano in that pocket watch. The picture of
It's
it.
so brilliant. That's so Yeah. Yeah.
So like I
That's
just
so
think
brilliant.
about like, did they think about that? Like did they say, oh, let's design a device that can fit in a pocket watch? That can
Yeah.
fit in the pocket for a
Oh,
pocket watch.
yes. Okay, so then you you just mentioning like how companies will come to you with a
Yeah,
process
the brief.
and
The brief.
yeah,
Hmm.
it's the constraint.
Hmm.
You're never starting from the vacuum, from scratch
Mm.
with no sort of there's always something to bounce off of. And I think
Right.
that's so brilliant to start with something so ubiquitous like that little pocket for most people have jeans. Most people have that little pocket.
And I'm
So
sure.
that's really cool.
Mhm. Yeah, and I'm sure wouldn't be surprised if that was the brief for the iPod Nano. You know, create a device that can
Totally.
fit in your pocket for the pocket watch, or for that kind of pocket. And Mhm.
That's probably how it happened. That's most likely what it I mean, do you remember the unveiling of the MacBook Air and
no,
how it came
oh,
so when
in the
in
envelope.
the Yeah, yeah,
Oh yes,
yeah.
because yeah, they're making people think like, oh, it's as thin as paper. I'm sure that was you know how the brief started. It's like, hey, design a computer that can fit in a. Did that iPod Air, iPad? Sorry, MacBook Air came out. When did it come
It
out?
came out in 2006
10? Oh,
or 8,
oh,
around there,
really?
2008,
That far back?
maybe. I think so, yeah, yeah. If I'm not mistaken, that's around the time that it came out. If my Apple history doesn't fail me. Um, speaking of another Speaking of, like, constraints on that topic, I mean, there's so many things that we can, um so many different examples I can think of right now. One of them being the instant Polaroid. And do you know the story behind that? The instant
No,
Polaroid, how it came out?
no.
So, um, the the inventor, if I'm not if I can recall this correctly, I'm losing his name, but the prolific inventor behind the instant photograph, it came, I think Eastman, Kodak. I'm forgetting the name of the guy, and it's bothering me now. But he basically was taking a photo, and his like 5-year-old daughter was wanting to see it, and he had to explain to her that it takes time to develop it, and she
Film.
was saying like, I want to see it now, and it got him thinking, why can't I just see it now? And it set him off on, I think it was a couple years of development to try to get this instant photo to work. And he finally got it to work because of that constraint that suddenly came, like I think it's such a great story because it came out of a child, the desire to just go like,
I want to
I
see it
don't care
now.
about, yeah, I don't care about the photo process. I want to see it now. Um, and that constraint just made this guy invent a totally new format for photographs.
Yeah. And these are the things that we have to pay attention to. We have to seek for these moments.
Yeah,
And we have to really seek and pay attention to the things that we live with and design for these moments, design for these spaces, design for the kind of clothes we already wear. And I
yeah,
think innovation often, since we're on the topic of innovation, innovation often is like this product that just, I don't know, like it's sits by its own
mhm,
in school. Like innovation is the weird kid that sits in his own and no one talks
mhm,
to and no one knows who he is. But I think innovation, of course, to a certain extent, be more outgoing, interact, with the other kids in school, and I don't want to say be popular, but likable.
why not?
And that's it's easier to assimilate or to adopt new ideas, new habits when you connect it to something that you're already familiar with or something that you already have. um
Mm,
and I put the iPod Nano, touching on all these that we were familiar with but didn't know
yeah,
we could do with the now iPod Nano. So like, oh, I didn't know I could put my iPod Nano on my pocket watch of my jeans.
yeah,
So you're attaching these new inventions to things that we already do or have. Then these are seeds for. I'm sure the Nano was instrumental to getting people into the habit of carrying around an Apple product and something similar to the size of um the iPhone.
yeah. That's a really powerful thing just to remember that there are so many conversations going on and that have gone on before we even got here, before we
Mhm.
even became designers, that
Right.
we too can participate in and join the conversation. And yeah, like you mentioned, that's a good example or a metaphor where innovation should not be shy off in a corner by itself. It needs to come out and participate and have a dialogue and conversation with the other entities out there. And I think that's really powerful because you we're so uniquely positioned as designers to really have an impact. And what I mean by impact, I'm not saying, I think one of the misconceptions that I had earlier on in my career was to be truly innovative, you have to come out with something like the iPhone. You have to come out with something like, you know, the or the engine or something like that. It had to be something big. I quickly learned that innovation can look like different things and there are
Early.
levels to it. But one of the things that I just keep thinking about is how you can have such a big impact with the things that you make. You could you could literally just make I don't know, make cookies that you sell at the farmer's market, and that is providing value. It's providing uh you're providing a relationship with the customer. You're learning so much. Maybe that's
Mhm.
not a great example, but what I'm trying to get to is that there are degrees to innovation, and that's what I love about design, because you can create a new salt and pepper shaker and have it use a new manufacturing process or a new material. And that is already providing this moment of delight where, in the kitchen or in the home. And so there are degrees to the the way design can improve our microcosm, our world, our environment. And it doesn't have to be something, super
Grandiose,
extravagant.
yeah. Yeah. This example reminds me of where the Wright brothers were trying to figure out how to create the first flying machine for, the first airplane.
Yeah.
There was another during that time, there was another, I don't know if it was person or scientist or like there was another person,
Hmm.
wealthy
Yeah.
person, trying to figure out how to
Yes.
make a machine. And this person had, access to almost, unlimited resources, unlimited funding, quote unquote, brightest minds around him, and they couldn't figure it out.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the Wright brothers, with, limited resources, limited funding, they own a bicycle shop, but their approach and their approach and their mindset, right, for what they were trying to accomplish and figure out how to make the first airplane, like, flying.
Yeah.
And that's a lesson. That's a lesson that, you know, you to have you don't need to have all the answers, have to have all the money in the world to make a change. Just pay attention to what you have, who's next to you, and you know, uh, be resourceful, and try to the best ability to like tune and assess what's important, because I'm sure the Wright brothers were able to uh, um, and were able to like say, okay, these are the things that we need to make this machine fly,
Yeah.
and they did it, and it took off. Meanwhile, I'm sure the other people were asking the same questions, but they weren't evaluating, or they weren't prioritizing the prioritizing the things that they truly needed to make whatever they were trying to make fly.
I I also wonder what the role what role obsession plays with this. Like you have all the resources, you have the
Mhm.
job, you're the one that's tasked with coming up with this flying machine, but you're not really obsessed with it. You're not really it's just your job. But on
Or
the
it's a
other hand, you have
hobby. It's a
or it's a
hobby.
hobby. But on the other hand, you have these two individuals who are just fixated on this idea of creating something that, gives flight. Um, and and
That's mhm.
and there's a difference there. There's a difference between,
Yeah.
what you're paying attention to and how long you're paying attention to it.
Mhm.
If you never turn that off, you're always thinking about that singular goal, that problem. You're going to be observing everything to look for clues. I'm thinking this is the way the
Mhm.
the mind works versus,
Mhm.
someone who's not doesn't really care. And you get to see that, I think, even in the products themselves. That's why I'm always like extremely interested in things that are made by craftspeople, whatever it is.
You can tell the level of detail and how it works,
Yeah.
because I'm sure for, for the flying machine, because they work at a bike shop, I'm sure they understood, like the brake
Mechan
system, yeah, brake that is
Yes.
through wires, and then you can control things through wire, all these things come into play.
Dude, that's so poetic too, just to think about two guys working on bikes where that's how, like, we literally take off as a species. We discover flight through these guys. Um,
That's evolution.
I I also have been thinking a lot about relationships in terms of collaborators,
Mm,
because I've been doing some research, just looking back at, you know, people, designers that have influenced me. And we've talked about this at a great length. But one of those designers for me is Johnny Ive. And I'm sure to a lot of people. But for me, I've started following Johnny Ive about 20 plus years ago before going
Oh
to
wow.
SCAD.
Oh wow.
And and what I've been sort of researching is how his relationships have led to design. Relationship was with Steve Jobs developing Apple's comeback products, and the rest is history. But now Johnny Ive, Sir Johnny, he has been designing with people who are experts in their industry. So he's worked with a person at Lin, spelled Linn, and they created a record player. And I actually have to tell this story really quickly. But so Johnny Ive's personal assistant emails the CEO of this company called Lin. They make high quality audio equipment. I believe they're based in Ireland. Don't quote me. But the CEO gets this LinkedIn message. He thinks it's spam, so he deletes it. Um, Goes about his day, and he's just like, why is it bothering me? Why is that message bothering me? He goes back, says that he spent like, I don't know how long trying to figure out how to take the message out of the trash. He figures it out. He responds, and it turns out to be real. It turns out that
Oh,
Johnny Ive was really interested in just talking and potentially, doing something together. He the CEO was like, yeah, our 50-year anniversary is next year. Do you want to help us with, designing that? So they designed a turntable, a record player, a 250 limited edition, $60,000 for this collectible. But that's the quick story. So make sure that when someone messages you, like make sure that you take it seriously because you never know.
you
But
never know.
the relationships that Johnny has established ever since uh you know Steve passed away, um those relationships have led to really beautiful products and innovative products. And I think, admiring his philosophy around just like pairing up with the right people to make things. And I want
Yeah,
to
you're
hear
gonna.
from
Yeah,
you. Yeah, I want to hear your thoughts on that, on like just how important it is to be selective with who you work with.
yeah. Well, it all starts with you gotta send the first message, or you gotta make the first move to have the conversation, and you can quickly gauge that a person is likely like minded,
Yeah.
and those are people that you need in your corner because you need allies in the process of innovation and product creation. You need people that advocate for you. You need people that believe in your vision, and they need you need people that sees your vision as well. Like you both have to see eye to eye, and trust. You have to trust people that they're gonna make the decisions. The best decisions. You know, either for you or for the project. But also, people have to trust you that you're gonna make the best decisions. But yeah, it all comes down to like you know cultivating, building these relationships, and you can gauge like who who do you want in your team, who do you want in your corner, and there are people that are always willing to help you, always willing to put on a good word for you, and yeah. I think that's how you can start. Also, you when you start actually working, then that's another test. How easy is to work with someone. That's another test that like, oh, okay, this person gets it or this person. And I don't say like get it in the sense that like, oh, just follow orders, but there is a balance, between like, constructive criticism, um, or just thinking out loud type of situation. That's who you need. You need people that not only says yes to what request, but they also like challenge you in a positive way. Um, and yeah, so like you
Yeah.
can. I think you feel it. You can feel that, oh,
For
this
sure.
person, is on it's on the same frequency as I am.
Yeah. I think frequency is a really good way to put it because you you never I don't think that the collaboration, the ideal collaboration is just someone who says yes to everything that you're suggesting.
Mhm,
It's it really just I think that the ideal scenario, the ideal collaboration conversation, they resemble they resemble almost like a one person tells a story, the other person adds more to the story, and then you're sort of on this quest to find the answers to these questions, and you're mostly just fascinated by the same questions or irritated by the same things, and you're sort of looking for a way out, a solution. Um, I like to compare it a lot to music and to playing in a band.
mm,
Like being able to have the silent acknowledge of, okay, I see where you're going. I'll support you. I'll
mhm.
support your vision here. um, and then maybe this, the musician takes a background role, and now you have to sort of lead the melody and sort of lead the process and lead the song or wherever the music is going, and I think that that is also um, another component, this collaboration component that's so critical in innovation, I believe, because we do see the individuals, that the leaders of the teams or the leaders at these companies, but there are so many individuals in the background who make this stuff happen, and it's their relationships with each other over time
Mhm.
that I don't think we talk enough about. It's that duration. I mean, can you imagine? This is part of why I'm so fascinated by Johnny Ive. It's that he's surrounded by people that he's been collaborating with for 20 plus years. Like,
Wow.
that amount of knowledge and intuition and trust that comes from working with people for that long, it must speed up the process in an enormous amount, right?
Oh, totally. And you can, like, trust these people blindly.
Yeah. Because they know you.
Uh,
They know you know each other, your
you
sensibilities are
trust
sort
each
of
other, yeah. You trust each other, and you believe in each other. So, like, that's all you need, trust and believe.
100%. No, I think this has been a great conversation about innovation from not just a buzzword, but something that can really inspire us to ask better questions and cultivate relationships, you know, stretch ourselves to open up new relationships and collaborate with new people, and find our allies in innovation. I think that that is something we could dedicate another episode on, especially with people who are in the workplace that sometimes
The only
your
designer,
idea,
yeah, we're
yeah,
the only designers.
yeah, that's gonna be a good one. Just a quick side note, I one of the companies that I was working with a couple years back, it was only two designers on the team,
Oh my
and
god.
yeah, I know. There's a lot of work going on, and I realized that the only way to sort of replicate or expand the design team without necessarily hiring more designers was just to be more open about the design process and talk about it, do workshops with the engineers and the rest of the
Oh, wow.
teammates. So I led workshops there to share the thinking and share what goes on in the design process, because we needed everyone to start to think like a designer, like, how do we make this better for people, etc. And so
Mhm.
by doing that, that's just one way that you can create allies in innovation at your company, um, which we should definitely touch on that in the future. But yeah, just to recap this, the importance of collaborating with people, it's the only way to really try to um, create something that's better than what you had
Mhm.
before. So thank you so much again for this great conversation, Caesar. If you're down,
Likewise, likewise.
let's
Yeah,
close
thank
out.
you. Sounds good. Thank you guys for tuning in. We welcome any stories, comments. Please feel free to share, comment, and we look forward to the next episode. We are just to give you a little like insight as to what's coming. We are wrapping up soon this first season of the Moodboard podcast because we wanna step back, analyze, evaluate, reassess what we have been doing. We also want to spend a little bit more time on marketing and working on just the structure of how we do things here in the Moodboard podcast. And we we will update you guys on our social media outlets, on the outcome of this this process. Thank you guys again for tuning in. This is the Moodboard podcast, and this is Caesar.
This is Aaron.
And we're two creatives helping others unlock their creative potential by having meaningful and insightful conversations. Until next time.
Till next time. Bye bye.